you all for this digital session, which is co-organized by the European Business and Technology Center with INCRSAT, along with Anand and Anas as our knowledge partner. EBTC has been in Indo-European collaboration for years, and also we are engaged in many IPR aspects, and that's why we are very pleased to organize this webinar along with INCRSAT to create more awareness about the existing legal framework around protection of plant varieties across the world, with special focus on the PPVFR Act of India in terms of legal and technical aspects. Now, I would like to give word to Dr. Sriyamani Tripathi from INCRSAT for his welcoming remark. Dr. Tripathi, over to you.
Thanks, Hannah. Good morning to all participants and eminent speakers and panelists. We welcome you all for this program. The basis for this program has been that at INCRSAT we have established Intellectual Property Assistance Cell with support from the Ministry of MSME, which is also recognized as WIPO TIS Center for Technology Promotion and Innovation. So we have received a lot of requests that plant variety is not talked about. We discuss about patent, trademark, others, but plant variety is not being discussed a lot. So we thought that we should organize something. And we are very thankful to the Plant Variety Authority that they have agreed to share their knowledge and what the work government is doing on this aspect. So I think the participants will get a benefit. This is a kind of a preliminary session, or you can say a first round of discussion. We will have more programs in future. So treat this like a basic event or basic program. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi. And as you rightly said, we are definitely planning with INCRSAT organize more events in the future to kind of, again, broaden this aspect along with different government bodies and different industry players. So now let me introduce our esteemed speakers, because we have really amazing panel here right now, and we are very grateful for all of them to find time to join us today. So I would start with Dr. Tika Nagaratna, who is the first woman registrar of the PPVFR Authority in New Delhi. Doctor is a professor of plant psychology at University of Agricultural Science, Bangalore. She has done her doctorate at UAS in Bangalore and is a Sir C.V. Raman Fellow from UGC, and did her postdoctoral research on crop modeling in sunflower from University of Florida. And this particular program was done under Indo-US 21st Century Knowledge Initiative program. Doctor has a rich experience of 22 years. She has published more than 120 research articles and publications. And as a registrar, she plays an important role in framing of the US guidelines, registration of plant varieties, etc. She is serving as a member secretary in many important decision-making task force committees and playing key role in Indo-German collaborative programs at PPVFRA in New Delhi. Doctor, really welcome. We are very, very glad that you are joining us. From the authority, we have one more person, and that's Shri Raj Ganesh DS, who completed his graduation and post-graduation in law with specialization in property law from Madras Government Law College. He has practiced as an advocate in Madras High Court for 8 years, and he has joined as legal assistant through UPCS. In India, you have so many abbreviations always. And he was posted at the Port Blair, and thereafter he joined as a legal advisor at the authority and has been working there for 13 years. Welcome, Dr. Ganesh. And then we have Dr. Kalpana Sastry. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. She is a distinguished agriculture scientist with nearly 3 decades of expertise in the area of agricultural research, technology, commercialization, intellectual property, and innovation management. Oh, the list goes on. She's also entrepreneur and startup ecosystem development in agriculture. Dr. Kalpana worked in various roles in ICAR National Academy of Agricultural Research Management. She's closely associated in technology backstopping activities for a wide range of stakeholders, and she's involved with the IP informatics technology management and in upscaling of innovation for agri-rural sector for the last 2 decades. She is currently engaged at the Center for Innovation and Agri-Entrepreneurship at PJTSAU Hyderabad. Welcome, Doctor. And last at least is Dr. Niti Wilson, who was also my previous colleague. And Dr. Niti Wilson is a partner at intellectual property law from Anand & Anand. She has been having expertise in IP protection and management and regulatory advice for biological resources. Niti started her career as research scientist in the area of plant molecular biology as a research associate in TERI and joined as a patent facilitating center of TIFAC, which is the anonymous body under DST. She has been with Anand & Anand since past 15 years, and she represents clients before the Patent Office, Patent Variety Authority, APAB, and courts in India. So thank you very much to all of you. We are, as I said many times, very pleased that you join us with your expertise, and we hope that the participants will enjoy what you have to say. And now I would like to ask Dr. Let me see, Dr. from the from the authority. So I can't find it here. to give us your remarks. Doctor, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Hannah, for the wonderful introduction of all the key speakers. Is it audible, my voice? Yes. My voice is audible to all of you? Yeah. And then thank you, Dr. Surya, also. I'm so happy to see Dr. Kalpana Shastri after a decade or so. And also I'm happy to meet Dr. Niti Wilson here. And of course, my colleague, Dr. Raj Ganesh. I feel this is a good combination of both technical and legal team. And first of all, before I go in detail about my opening remarks, I would like to appreciate the organizers for selecting such an interesting topic here. And one thing I'll tell you, to discuss about this PPAFR Act, this 1.5 hours is not at all sufficient. Anyway, all the key speakers will try to cover the topic, and within whatever the time you have given. Thank you. And then just let me start my opening remarks with a small introduction. That all of you know that there are 8 intellectual properties under Indian legislation. Next to this Biodiversity Act 2002, this PPAFR Act 2001 is the youngest entrant of IPR in India. And though though it is the youngest entry, it has a great significance in the current era, actually. And then it's a very unique one, and then we cannot find its parallel anywhere in the world now for so many reasons, which I'm going to share with you all today. Just to give, I think, hopefully Dr. Niti will be covering much about this PPAFR Act and everything, and then I'm not going in detail, only the main activities and the new initiatives which have been done recently. Those things I would like to share. I feel this is a good platform to share all this information with all the participants here. Just to give a small introduction, that India became signatory to TRIPS agreement in 1994, and then as per this Article 27.3b, it says that the member countries have to are supposed to protect the plant varieties either by patent system or sui generis system or the combination thereof. But we could not go for the patent because this Indian Patent Act 1970 excludes the products obtained from agriculture and horticulture process from patentability. So, and after analyzing this socio-economic needs of our country, India chose this sui generis system. And then the act came into existence in 2001, and the rules came into formulated in 2003, and the authority came into, this authority came into force partially with effect from 2005 and came into force in total with effect from 2006. So I would like to say that this unique law, which germinated as a seed in 2006, has grown into a tree now. I'm so happy to share with you all that as on today, we have notified 161 crop species for registration. And also, this is the time that we must remember that the plant breeder's right is a statutory right, means the statutory means it is granted under a statute or by a legislation. So without registration, so these rights are not given. So in my remarks, just to make it more clear, I would like to compare. Most of the time, I would be comparing our PPFR Act with the other IPs in the world. So when compared to this Trademark and Copyright Act, this where the right is obtained by use or the publication in case of trademark and copyright, but here in case of PPFR Act, this one right is given mainly on the basis of registration. I mean to say that registration is mandatory here. And then, so this is almost similar to patent where this right is given based on that. And then hence all the plant breeders and the farmers who are involved in the development of this variety should keep it in the mind that they must register their varieties as and when they develop the variety and try to come out for the registration before commercialization. And this is one of the important points. The another unique nature of this act I would like to mention here is that it's not only the new varieties, the protection is also given for the extant varieties. Nowhere in the world there is a legislation protecting the extant varieties. You may ask, the other countries may ask, because all other countries are going for the protection is given only for this new varieties, why India is opting for protection of this extant varieties. Here I would like to mention that India is having a rich agrobiodiversity. To protect the rich agrobiodiversity, and also the land races and the traditional varieties conserved and maintained by our farmers, we do support this one extant varieties. Extant varieties means, because I'm not going in detail here because of the time shortage, extant varieties means they're already existing varieties. So to support or protect the rich agrobiodiversity and also the land races and traditional varieties, we do protect these extant varieties. And not these public domain varieties. Public domain varieties are not eligible for the protection because they cannot be registered, as they most of the time they constitute the gene pool for the development of these new varieties. So you might be asking me that how long you'll go for this protection of the extant varieties. So we do have time limit for the protection of this extant varieties. So unlike new varieties where it is open forever, in case of extant varieties, we have the time limit. Within a stipulated time, it's already decided by the authority. And before that, the plant breeders or those who have developed the varieties, those who are having the varieties in the names, they have to come forward for the registration. So let's just give me a small data here. So I told you that 161 varieties have been, crops have been notified, out of which for 25 crops, already the time limit is over. Further, we don't accept any applications for those 25. So 25 in that lot, most of them are vegetables and also some oilseed crops are there. And then, so now as on this July 22, this 2020, 14 crops, time limit was over, almost over for 14 crops, which included many of the major crops like rice, bread wheat, maize, sorghum, pearl millet, and majority of the pulses here. But due to this pandemic situation in the world and also this nationwide lockdown, we have extended the time period for 3 more months. That is, it is accepted. These crops, these for 14 crops, we are going to accept the registration application for registration. The time is extended up to 27th October 2020. And then for further details, you can go through the public notice which we have issued, that is 8 of 2020, dated 24/7/2020. So you can go through that. And then in addition to this, if I start talking about farmers' rights, so many things are there, since only our act is having the farmers' rights. So I'm not going in detail. Also, just I would like to mention that The farmers variety means a farmer or farmers community is entitled to be considered for registration of the farmers variety under extant category. If they develop any new category, they'll be like that's considered under new category only. And then recently many issues were raised in case under this farmers rights, and we have tried our level best. I think we have cleared each and every doubt, clarification which was required by many people. And then recently we have released FAQs, and now it has been uploaded on our website, revised FAQs. Just 10 days back we have uploaded. Hope Dr. Neeti has seen that. And then I think we have tried to clear each and every aspect in that. And then there we have cleared many doubts on this farmers' rights. So all of you know that the farmer shall be deemed to be entitled to save, use, sow, resow, exchange, share, or sell his farm produce, including seed of a variety protected under this act. And then we have clearly explained what is resow, what is sow, all these things. And then, so when we talk about these types of varieties, like a categories of varieties, like a new variety, extant varieties, farmers varieties, I've been talking about this in my remarks. So here, so what is the duration of the protection which we give? That is, like other IPRs, where the registration dates back to the date of filing of the application. In case of Plant Varieties Act, it takes effect from the date of grant of the certificate of the registration, which is for 15 years in case of field crops and 18 years in case of trees and vines. For another, actually, 3 more categories under extant. One is varieties with common knowledge and the farmers varieties, and the extant notified varieties comes under this extant category. So extant notified categories means the varieties which are being notified under Section 6 of Seeds Act 1966. So for that, duration for the protection is protection starts from the date of notification of the variety in the Gazette. So from there it is counted 15 years for field crops like that. So one thing I mentioned you here, that is date of filing of the application and the date of granting of the certificate. There will be a huge gap here. So what is the protection given for the breeders or those who are involved in development of the varieties? Here, there is a provision relating to the provisional protection to protect the interest of the breeders here from the date of filing of the application up to date of granting of certificate of registration. In fact, this provision relating to provisional protection was struck down by Honorable Delhi High Court, and this authority went on appeal to the Honorable Supreme Court and has obtained a stay on this judgment. And now the provision relating to provisional protection is still in force. So not to worry, even the duration is more there. But anyway, so one more point I would like to compare between the IPs, other IPs and our PPFR Act. See, in other IPs, what happens? The right is given only where considering only the database examination. Only the database examination is done. Whereas in our plant variety protection, apart from database examination, field testing is done. So here I can't go in detail about the field testing, but in 1 or 2 sentences, I would like to share that this is whenever the variety is applied for registration, it should fulfill the criteria of NDAS, that it should be novel if it is under novelty, new variety, and then it should have one distinctive character, and then it should be that distinctive character should be uniform, and then that character should be stable over the seasons. Okay, and then the any variety it is eligible for this registration means for protection means it should fulfill the criteria of DUS. For that, where in our law we use the biological specimen. That is here in case of PPV, here in case of registration, it is a seed material, and then it is grown in the field. And then the observations were recorded as per the DUS guidelines developed by our PPVFR authority, and then field testing is done. In case of trees and vines, there is a provision for the on-site dust testing. So this field testing is done, as I told you, that field testing is done only in this IP. So this creates a challenge in the registration process, as the gestation period for registration of the plant variety is longer than the gestation period of the registration of other intellectual property rights. And to reduce this, to overcome this problem, to reduce the gestation period, but we can't afford this field testing, that will be there. So each and every step we went through that. And then we have come out with a new procedure, new protocol, where mainly to reduce the time taken for the date of application and the date of issuing of the certificate. So we have come out with a new protocol, new procedure that we have been adapting that procedure with effect from 1st September 2018. And then here mainly to reduce the time period. So, and then when I mentioned this new procedure of registration, so my talk will not be completed if I don't mention, I don't know whether to say most controversial thing or it's a normal one. It's a compound registration of a hybrids and parental lines. So most interesting topic. And then if I talk more about this, I think Dr. Neeti will be very happy to discuss about this one. Anyway, just I would like to mention here, may not be going in detail here. So another most important aspect is that if the candidate variety is a hybrid, if the candidate variety is a hybrid for which you are seeking a protection, a PPV-FRA, the submission of the seeds of the parental lines and the DOS testing for the parental lines is also mandatory. Okay, so now in case of hybrids, F1s are the commercial product where we give it to farmers. And then, so further, they cannot reuse the hybrids. You all know if they reuse, it is going to be F2 on segregating material and the uniformity will not be there. So these hybrids, there is no existence for these hybrids without parental lines. So we need to check this parental lines. Anyway, as I told you, if afterwards, if anybody raises, we can give a clarification here. Anyway, this is mainly this main intention of going for hybrid testing along with the parental lines is to prevent the evergreening of the plant varieties. Most of you understand what is this evergreening of the plant varieties. And then legal validity of registration of hybrids and the parental lines, anyway, it is sub judice. And the authority is defending its legal validity on techno-legal grounds. And here I would like to mention one thing to all the lawyers. If any lawyers are attending here with a legal background, see, our act is techno-legal, first technical. Okay, so any decisions made at PPV-FRA, so based on the technical things, technical matters. So based on these technical matters, legal comes, not the other way around. Yeah, these are the very important things I wanted to discuss with you and I wanted to share with you. And then the another 2 minutes I may need here. So now, as I stated earlier, the plant varieties registry is in its teens. This is the 14 years. And hence it has both challenges and opportunities to convert those challenges into milestones. Such challenges and opportunities which authority is facing, I like to share with you all. First and foremost challenge is that, I can say that Indian law of plant variety protection is little internationally isolated when compared to other IPs like trademark, copyrights, and patents. This is because of the many reasons, but I would like to mention only 2 reasons here. This is the reasons are the registration of the extant varieties. So as I mentioned earlier, so everywhere in all the countries, there is registration for protection is given only for the new varieties, not for the extant varieties. Only our nation is giving that, and the reason also I've already quoted. So one is that registration of this extant varieties and misconstruction of farmers' rights. These are the 2 major reasons for international community in not entering into treaties and conventions with India. So in many cases and many platforms, we have clarified to the international community at various levels. And hopefully, again, because I told you that within a short period of time, we are going to close this registration of all the extant varieties. Even farmers' varieties also, for most of the crops, it is 2024 and 2025, based on the release of the DAS guidelines there. And then hopefully after this, after closing of registration of this extant varieties, so registration of new varieties will continue forever, and thereby mistrust of international community can be removed at the earliest. And the second important challenge, only 2 important points I'm covering here. The second important challenge with the PPVFRA is, with proudly and boldly, I do say that we are with our farmers. Always we are with our farmers, because majority of the farmers in India are engaged in sustenance farming and not in commercial farming. Majority of them are small and marginal farmers. So they are not into commercial farming on a large scale as done by international farmers. So farmers' rights. So I told you lot of things. One day to talk about exclusively on farmers' rights. Actually, interpretation is very different, and the farmers' rights should be understood and interpreted in the light of the socio-economic condition of our farmers, in India. It should not be other way around, or it should not be done vice versa. And then these two important many challenges we are facing here by under the great leadership of Dr. Prabhu. We are overcoming so many things here, mainly because of our strength in technical aspects. I would say that mainly because of the strength in technical aspects, we are coming out with the many changes. And then at the end of my remarks, I would like to add some of the new initiatives which have been started here. So main thing is that the establishment of online filing of the applications. We are coming out with a dynamic website, and then it is in a final touch we are giving. And then though it may take a little bit of time, but shortly we are going to assure you that shortly we are going to have an online filing of the applications for the registration, so that this time will be time will be reduced there. We can save the timings there. Another important point here is, as you all know, that DS testing, as I mentioned earlier, this is done by state agriculture universities, ICRs, and CSI institutes, who are also involved in the breeding of plant varieties. So in future, this may lead to conflict of interest. That's why there is a proposal for outsourcing of DUS testing to public and private entities, where those who are not involved in the development of any varieties. So already one high-end task committee was constituted, and then they have submitted the report to our authority, and then our chairperson of our authority, we have to take a decision at the earliest. And then one more thing I want to add here. Also, there is a decision is going on and the implementation of DNA fingerprinting. So we are trying to implement DNA fingerprinting technology. And then this will be in addition to field testing, not exclusive one. We don't depend only on the DNA fingerprinting. So in addition to field testing, we are going to add this DNA fingerprinting technology also. And then from up to registration certificate, issuing of the certificate, and up to completion of the registration, to some extent we are strong enough, especially with this new procedure. But the thing is that there is a lacuna in post-PVP registration. It's a post-PVP control. So we are focusing, henceforth, we'll be focusing more on post-PVP registration or post-PVP control. Hopefully we'll come out with the good results in a post-PVP registration also, like other countries. Yeah. And then this, before I wind up my remarks, and then also sharing all these important aspects on behalf of PPVFRA, just I would like to quote Wilcox's, I would like to share Wilcox's quote here. A weed is but an unloved flower here, and also shows much in plant varieties is still to be explored. The authority in its existence of the past 14 years has taken it has taken a giant leap beyond its capacity, and the momentum will be sustained to reach the prime place among other intellectual property registries of India. And then I'd like to thank all of you for giving us opportunity to share some of the important informations with all the participants, and also with the international people also. And then once again, I appreciate these organizers for selecting this topic. And then hopefully all the participants will be benefited by these informations. And then all the best, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Nagaratna, for your very comprehensive remarks. I'm sure everybody, I myself a mechanical engineer, so I don't understand plant varieties much, but I'm sure the participants found it very interesting. And as you will be part of the panel discussion, I'm sure you will address some of the other queries later. So. Yeah. Before I move to the next part of this webinar and ask Dr. Niti Wilson for her presentation, I would just like to mention to our listeners to keep sharing their questions in the question answers box. And we would also like to remind you that the certificates will be provided only those participants who will stay throughout the whole webinar, so for 1.5 hours. So now I think it's the right time to pass the floor to Niti to share her light on the PPVFR Act. Niti, please, over to you. I think you have to unmute yourself if you have not done so.
Thank you, Hannah. After Dr. Nagaratna's extensive and very clear comments, I don't think that the topic which Dr. Tripathi gave me, just an overview, because this is the introductory session and many people don't know anything. So now I believe everybody, I'm just going to brush through my slides, because thank you, Dr. Nagaratna, for explaining so clearly. And at the same time, also informing us all the developments at the Plant Variety Authority. So we look forward to the electronic filing, definitely. That will definitely reduce a lot of efforts. And DNA fingerprinting is what I'm looking forward to. So there's a lot of progress that we are seeing here. The topic for me, whenever I speak on intellectual property rights, are usually patents and designs. And plant variety always comes out separately, because for some reason, as Dr. Nagaratna also said, it's a very different technology. It cannot be compared with everything which we already have. When we think from intellectual property rights perspective, you see the blue ones down there are the ones which usually come into picture whenever there are inventions, patents, designs, and trade secrets. These are the industrial property part of IPRs, besides copyrights, which are most well known in the industry, for the sake of the fact that not just because they have been there since long. The Patents and Designs Act has been there since 1911 in India. And the trade secrets have been there for nobody knows since when. So this is something which everybody knows. Trademarks became the most important part of intellectual property rights, because the importance was understood by all the businesses. And come what may, when we are talking of intellectual property rights, even when it is plant variety, we are talking of commercialization. And that's why trademarks play an important role there as well. The remaining is the geographical indication, which I always put as a subset to trademarks, because it's mainly on the name, though it's much more specialized than the trademark, which only relates to the name for a business or a service that is provided. Geographical indication has to have a connection with the geography or the place where we are talking about. Taking example of Darjeeling tea, it is not necessarily just the tea, the variety, or the place it's being grown. It has to have that particular flavor which is expected from Darjeeling tea. And hence, geographical indications are a very specialized form of trademarks if we take it in a very simple manner. That leaves us with the topic of today, the plant variety rights. Now, why do we need plant variety protection? We have been growing plant varieties since long. It's the same reason for which most of patents are asked to be protected. The process of coming up with a new variety is not easy. It is a long and many a times very expensive process, and they can be very easily reproduced. So the innovators may not get the advantage of it. In this process, if we want to encourage the breeders and recover the investment, and at the same time create new varieties, providing protection for plant variety becomes very essential. Going a step back, I will just go through internationally the scenario. we are in, we are in a phase when we are not talking of our country specifically. We are living in a global village. And we are thinking that how the whole world moves together. And in 2015, when the United Nations came up with the 2030 Agenda of Sustainable Development Goals, where these 17 different goals were decided for the whole world, out of which eradicating poverty and zero hunger being on the top of the list, that's where the whole world aligned themselves, irrespective of which country, that how to grow sustainably as a world together. And that's when the role of plant variety also comes into picture. The protection of plant variety plays its role in these 6 different goals which I've listed here. Now, as you can see, that the most critical part which plant variety has to play is that it enables the plant breeders to protect their innovations and obtain a return on their investments, and in developing varieties that meets the needs of the farmers and the consumers. Now, this in turn encourages them to continue investing in their plant breeding programs. And thus the plant variety protection supports the breeders, the landscape of plant breeding itself, and enables a diverse range of breeders and breeding programs to thrive. This ensures that the latest developments in plant breeding are available to farmers and growers around the world. And the effective use of plant breeding rights system can therefore translate the goals laid out in the 2030 Agenda of the Sustainable Development into reality. There's another international organization which the people who are working on plant variety or starting to work on plant variety need to be aware of, is the ITPGRFA. This treaty relates specifically to the food and agricultural related genetic resources, and it's a multilateral system for access and benefit sharing. It also provides for farmers' rights, but it does not have any statutory strength in it, just like our Plant Variety Act has. But this is a very robust system which helps for 64 different crop species, which make up to 80% of all the food crops that are used in the world for food, in plant for vegetarians especially, because I'm not counting here non-veg. And so 80% of all the plants which are used in food are covered by these 64 crops. And this treaty recognizes the farmers' rights and facilitates access to the genetic material of the 64 crops for research, breeding, and training for food and agriculture, while advocating sustainable use through breeding new varieties. Now, coming to another international organization which is specifically for plant variety. Most of the people who are working in the plant variety area know about. This is UPOV, which is the International Union for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants. It is working since 1961 towards providing a uniform framework as an intergovernmental organization for protection of plant variety. There have been revisions in 91 and 78. In fact, in 78, India also had tried to become part of UPOV, because that was the time where UPOV 1978 had provision for farmers' rights. The 1991 one does not have, the treaty does not have the provisions, and hence India is not part of 91. So if you see that there are 76 members of UPOV, the green color ones here. The red ones have initiated to be part of UPOV in some manner or the other. And the others are in touch with the UPOV office, covering the whole world related to plant variety protection. The various databases and the plants that they protect definitely help all the breeders around the world. Now, two more, I will mention these international organizations and get back to our own act. One, I have to mention the Convention on Biological Diversity for two reasons. One, it is related to the access and benefit sharing of biological resources. Under the Nagoya Protocol, we already have the system in place in India, though it is not directly linked to our act. However, it is an important integral part, and the plant variety law, the statute itself in its objectives and reasons to have the act in place, recognizes that the Plant Variety Act is an adjunct to the act which is being formulated in lines with the CBD, which is the Biological Diversity Act. So the biological diversity related provisions of benefit sharing clearly pull out that any registered variety would not come under it, but non-registered varieties do come under the purview of the act under the CBD, which comes in India as Biological Diversity Act. Finally, we come to the World Trade Organization's most famous treaty on intellectual property rights, the trade-related intellectual property rights. Now, the World Trade Organization's role is to facilitate trade or business all around the world. And TRIPS is a treaty which provides for minimum standards. It's a minimum standard creating a treaty for all intellectual property rights. And once that standard is created, TRIPS is very flexible, that members can make any changes as per the requirements of the local laws, if they can make it more stringent, if they want to, but they have to at least fulfill the basic criteria. And in 1995, when India became member of TRIPS, that is when we had to call for the protection of plant varieties, which was clearly excluded from our patent law, to have its protection either under the patent system or as an effective sui generis system. After India became member of WTO, several revisions were made to the Patent Act. And easily, because see, as you can see here, the microorganisms have been listed here, which cannot be excluded from patentability. So that was included in the patent law. There were several provisions which are added in the patent law, including exclusive marketing rights related to pharmaceutical product patents. And that's where plants could also have been added in the patent law. But India decided to go for a sui generis system, which is a self-created system, wherein we have a separate law for protection specifically for plant varieties. And these are the statutes which have come based on that. The Act, which came in 2001, followed by rules and regulations in 3 and 6 subsequently. And after the regulations came in picture, that's when the application form was first published. So 2007 is when the authority actually started taking applications. That time, 12 species were identified, plant species were identified, which were accepted for registration. So applications could be made for them. And as Dr. Nagaratna already said, we already have 161 now for registrations here. Now, there are several other rules and regulations which have come into picture, which are all helping, you know, as and when the time is coming for better enforcement and better implementation of the law. The objectives of the authority are not just to protect plant breeders' rights, but also to protect the rights of the farmers. This has been clearly put within the statute itself. So our Sui Generis Plant Variety Act is not just an intellectual property act. We have to understand this because it is not just based on TRIPS 27.3b. It is also following the other international obligations that they have and they want to follow, such as the one which is under the ITPGRFA or the CBD. And all of them together is what makes our act very distinct. And most importantly, our act does not come under the Ministry of Commerce like all the other intellectual property laws, but under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Act. So this is also a very clear distinction which our act has. The act, as we said, that takes care of the breeders and the farmers. A breeder is the one who breeds, evolves, or develops a variety. And the farmer is the one who cultivates himself or through supervision, or conserves or preserves or adds value to the wild species or traditional varieties. Now, what are the rights of these two different entities? The breeder inherently includes the farmers. The farmers, when they are talking of wild species or traditional varieties, is when they would have separate rights for that. But when they are talking about growing of even registered varieties, they still continue to have that right because of their farm produce. So the rights of the breeders are on the variety and the rights of the farmers are on the farm produce. Now, the definition of plant variety. I'll not get into the technical aspects as this is going to be a webinar series and we are going to go into detail for each and everything. I'm basically giving a bird's eye view, so we are capturing all the topics. And here, the plant grouping, which is identified by the expression of a specific characteristic. For example, shape of a seed or color of a flower. Such characteristics which can be seen and propagated from one generation to another is what would be considered as a variety when seen from the perspective of the patent plant variety law. There are different types of varieties which can be registered, as Dr. Nagaratna already spoke about the extant variety. A new variety according to the Act is the one which is not in the public, which has not come to the public domain 1 year for 2 years for the other crops and 6 years for the trees and vines when it's outside of India, and when it is inside of India, it's 1 year and 3 years. So the essentially derived varieties are the ones which differ from the original variety by one specific characteristic only. Farmer's variety we already spoke about. Transgenic varieties, which are the genetically modified varieties. As I'm depicting this, I just wanted to highlight here that the essentially derived varieties clearly say that it also comprises of the combination of genotypes of the initial varieties, and it has to be clearly distinguished from the initial variety. The window period of extant variety of several plant species, as was also mentioned, 14 of them recently elapsed, and now several more are pending just because of COVID-19. There's extension period, but yes, the time period is 3 years for the varieties which are not farmers varieties and 5 years for the varieties which are farmers varieties, unless it is extended. Who can register? Simply put, a breeder can be registered. A breeder could be a person, a legal person in India is a legal entity who can be sued, or a farmer, or a university has been specifically somehow categorized in the Act itself in the definition of who can register. A university or agriculture institution will also be under the definition of a person. The criteria for novelty, registration, novelty, as already spoken about what is in the new variety. A variety which is not in public domain in India earlier than 1 year before the date of filing, or outside India. In the case of trees or vines, 6 years, or in India, 4 years. So that's where the novelty definition comes in, which is not in the case of extant varieties. The only criteria which you have to fulfill in case of extant varieties are the dust tests. The dust test, which is the distinctness, uniformity, and stability test. Distinctness in terms of an essential characteristics. Uniformity in terms of the characteristic being shown by all the plants being grown with the acceptable of types. And stability is its ability to pass on from generation to generation. The Plant Variety Right Authority also provides for, the law also provides for exclusions, which is not going to be registered in case the variety protection leads to some harm or prejudice to the environment or is against public order or morality, injurious to life or health, specifying the terminator technology, which the public order would not be right for India. And also any particular genera or species which is exclusively notified by the central government can also be considered to be excluded. There is a lengthy process of registration. It takes some time. Legal system, it is in very short. You will file an application, there will be tests done, and once after the tests are cleared and changes are made, it will be accepted and then advertised. And in case there is no opposition, or if there is opposition and it is cleared off, a certificate of registration is issued. As of now, 158 crop species test guidelines have been issued, plus 3 more, making it 161 in case of extant varieties. And as per the Plant Variety Authority's beautiful website, the database indicates that till date 4,098 varieties have been registered, and the search facility also indicates that most of the applications are coming from ICAR. Now, I want to highlight here that the difference between the UPOV system and the Indian system is that in UPOV, you can go ahead and file your applications for any crop species. So there is no limitation based on dust testing, as also explained by Dr. Nagaratna. And till now, they have 9,177 varieties registered. The different types of rights provided by the Plant Variety Act, breeders and farmers' rights we already talked about. Researchers' rights is that you can continue to work on a registered variety and create new varieties. And community rights, which lead to benefit sharing. And convention country rights, where you can claim priority. And as per the latest FAQs, the convention countries are those which are members of the CBD. The term, as we know, is 9 and 6 years, which is renewable subject to review and upfront payment up to 15 years for trees and vines and other crops respectively. And there are several reliefs in case somebody is trying to infringe your rights granted. There could be injunction and damages or share of properties, which you could expect. And there is also provision of compulsory licensing in case a registered variety is not available in adequate quantity and at reasonable price. The appeals against the orders of the authority go to the Intellectual Property Appellate Board, and it has just started recently functioning. No full-blown orders yet, but we are looking at some case law and precedent setting now. There are certain court decisions that I wanted to take up, but I believe that my time is up. So what I'll do is I will just end my presentation here and keep the court decision discussions for some next webinar series, in the series of next webinar in the series, and end up with this quotation that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. And in this COVID-19 time, when we are understanding that the whole world is changing, we need to educate ourselves with the laws and integrate it with the technology in every area, and agriculture being one of the most important ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Neeti, for your very comprehensive presentation. And I'm sure that everybody feels sorry that you don't have more time to talk further. We are unfortunately running a little bit late, so I will not hold up anymore. And I will give floor to Dr. Tripathi to moderate the panel discussion among our panelists. So Dr. Tripathi, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. I think both our panelist speakers, they have given a very clear idea that what is going on and what are these law and what authority is planning to do. So Dr. Nagaratna has already answered a few of my queries also, that what next step they are going to do. So anyway, we are going to open the panel discussion, and panel discussion we will try to understand from the user's perspective more, because here we have taken the opinion from the facilitator, lawyer perspective, and the authority who is protecting and registering the variety. So we should also consider the user's perspective. Suppose I am a scientist, I am a breeder, what is my expectation? So for that purpose, I will start with Dr. Kalpana, and because Dr. Kalpana herself is a scientist and has done a very good job, tremendous commending job at the ICAR, and very well versed with the subject also. So what is the, what do you feel that, what is the requirement or expectation from the scientist or breeder or from the institute to ease out the process? Because it appears that it's a very techno-legal complex thing. How can we ease out the process? What is your experience, madam, please?
First of all, thank you, Dr. Tripathi, for this, and I'm quite happy to join the other three panelists also. It's always been a very challenging journey for anybody in the public sector organizations, especially. I would not comment on the scientists from industry, because if you notice, when the PPFR...
Madam, your voice is low. Can you...
when the authority started, is it okay now? Yeah. When the authority started opening up the first filing was actually by the industry. So you can, if you know the quantum and the speed at which, I think many people from the private sector were definitely more ready. Having said that, in this system, most researchers, I think one of the most, and I think even Dr. Nagaratnam will agree, it's mostly attitudinal also. Early days, it used to be a definite resistance to why even apply for a registration. And the focus was more on extant varieties, which I think now, it's almost now we are nearing the end, that whole journey itself. So if you ask what would be the current challenges, I would say there is a lot of talk on the pendency from right from the time of application. It's a long duration, and quite often that offsets when. Having said that, we cannot do anything about the statutorily, the timeline set by the law. But I was wondering if in the authority, there are certain phases where maybe a little bit of fast track can be done. And another thing, like in the patent office, we do have something like fast track in the patent filing. Can we start exploring such things in the PBP also? That's my first, take on this. The pendency is a big issue for most researchers, whether private or public sector. It does take a longer time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, madam. So now because already you have raised the question of pendency, and that was also looking for any answer for that. So as the authority has already explained that they are working on an online form of submitting application and expedite the process by reducing the timelines. So I would like to ask from the authority, anybody from the authorities can give anything, any detail that which step you feel that is the most crucial step in the registration process, and which step is taking in the longest time period. And apart from this online system filing and other things, is there any other mechanism or any other way you can guide the applicants that while submitting their application, they should take care of certain things that authority should not take so much of time for that. That is in applicant's hand itself, that while submitting application, they should take care of certain things. So how to reduce the pendency and how to reduce the burden from both sides, from the applicant and the authority side? Anybody from authority can give something on that?
Rajganesh, shall I take up this question? Yeah.
So yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, let me answer this one. Yeah, I do agree with Dr. Kalpana ma'am. So every time, whenever we used to address all the public and private sectors, this is a main question used to be raised by all. This is about why so much of pendency. There are many constraints. I do agree that there used to be a large number of pendency here, huge pendency. I do agree. And then because of many constraints like a staff shortage, all those things, and it is not feasible to now to share with you all now because we are coming out of those constraints now. But in the last 2 years, we are targeting more on this pendency. And then we are trying to clear as early as possible, especially the old applications. We don't have any issues with the new applications. I told you that with effect from 1st September 2018, we have adapted the new system, and then it is time targeted. Within 1 week, the file should be, 7 days, the time should be there with my assistants in the registry when it comes to me, registry. So we issue the PP number, and then if all the documents are there in the proper set, we issue the origin number, those things. So we are within 7 days, we have to clear the file, and then immediately in the immediate season, we have to send the seed material to dust testing without wasting any time. We are doing that for the new applications. Again, this pendency question is with the old applications. So now for the one question Dr. Surya was asking, mentioning here. So which stage of the processing of the application you feel it is challenging? So I'll tell you to all the participants and the applicants here, we do raise the queries here. So don't feel bad if I say use this word. I'm not targeting any legal persons here. So we do raise this queries, and then the varieties are developed by the breeders, and then the address, correspondent address is the legal advisor's name, And then we send these query letters to legal advisors, and then they reply that, sometimes partial reply we get, sometimes complete reply, sometimes we do get complete reply. And then there is a small gap with a response given by a lawyer or the plant breeder. And then so many times we struggle so much to understand, to make them to understand. So what is the query we are asking? We may be asking, what is the technology you followed? What is the breeding technology you followed to develop this? So it is there. And then I'll tell you, our Form 1 and TQ is the simplest form anybody can fill it up. It is no problem at all. And now we are always available. Registrars and all our technical staff, senior officers are always available, even on WhatsApp, and then phone calls, and then email. Immediately, you can ask anybody. So one of the meetings, some company was telling me, in 1 week, I had sent 300 query letters to that particular company. They said, we don't have so much time to answer your queries, so many queries you are raising. So my request to all of them is, please immediately, for 15 days time or so, we give, within the stipulated time, you send the reply to us, proper reply after consulting your breeder. You should not say that that breeder is not working now, he is retired or he is left the company, those reasons. And then once we give the particular required information, immediately we are doing that. So now I don't think the delay is there. And then I'll tell you, till last year, 2 years back, only 3,000 certificates were issued. Just Dr. Neeti was showing the data. So now, in the last 1 year, we have added almost 1,500 more certificates now. Almost we are crossing this 4,500 now. So we have speeded up this process now. Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, thank you, madam. So I think then Neeti, the question goes to you. What challenge you face? Because I'm also a scientist converted lawyer. I'm a scientist, also a lawyer also. So the question, this is a very relevant question. The inventor, the scientist, they know the real science. The attorneys, they are the facilitator. They cannot replace the role of the scientist. So what do you suggest to the innovator or applicant, those who are coming to you or going to any other lawyer, to make sure that they provide correct information, full information, and reduce the burden? Because this such kind of making communication, it is a burden for the authority also. If somebody submit application in first go complete and accurate, can we develop something model kind of thing that if you want to submit any application, at least these are the checklist, these are the models, you follow that? What is your advice?
As Dr. Nagaratna said, that the TQ is so systematic that it itself serves as a checklist for having all the information in place. And most of the times when the breeders, especially when they come from big companies, they don't have an issue filling in the TQs. But the main concern usually comes into responding at that 2-week time period. And most of the times when the companies have to report to their management and then take a call and then reach their breeder and come back, usually it comes a little less. The time period actually seems less. So this is something which is one of the challenges where to respond. It's not just the Plant Variety Authority, even the Biological Diversity Authority gives 15 days time. And most of the times we end up seeking additional time. So maybe this can be reviewed from the authority's side. Like in Patent Act, you have a fixed window of 6 months time. So that's the last date. And if you give me an objection letter, I have to revert back to you. You can issue a second objection letter. I can still revert within that 6 months period time, whether I revert last date or 2 months back. All these objections I would try to finish off. And then after that, if there is an objection, a hearing is fixed. And now everything is happening as a video conference hearing. So it's much more easier to discuss at that time and come to the solution. So if something in that lines can be thought from the varieties authorities side, I think it will be very helpful for the breeders who want to register their varieties. And for the startups, the kind of challenges we face is mainly defining how to distinguish plant varieties and what would be patented and what would be plant variety protected. Because most of the times for any IP, when people come, they say, we want to patent it. So that's one of the major challenges, that the awareness workshops in relation to plant variety protection are much lower as compared to patents or other IPRs. So I think the authority can play a very big role in increasing awareness, in collaboration with organizations like CPAM, which was developed under the once the national IPR policy, when they came up with the role of capacity building and awareness generation. So if you can tie up, and this platform which ICRISAT is giving now, these kind of webinars will definitely help.
Thank you, Dr. Niti. I think you have rightly said that knowledge dissemination, because I also feel that plant variety has not been discussed at the various forums because of this complex or something different kind of character that simple lawyers cannot understand the subject. But I say that this is not only the responsibility of authority to give a dissemination of knowledge. It is all of us should have a responsibility. Those who are involved in development, protection, dissemination, all university, colleges, public institutions, ICRISAT, everybody has a responsibility to help the authority to do the function, because government systems, they have their own constraints and limitations, budgets and the manpower. So we should not expect that everything should be done by the government. We should also do certain activities, and this is the attempt we are doing. So again, going back to Dr. Kalpana, that you have to play a key role in knowledge dissemination. And for knowledge dissemination, as you mentioned that in initial days, there was a lot of resistance and hesitance that why should we go for registration? Why should we go for that? So now you have to encourage, like suppose I'm a scientist or a breeder, you have to encourage me, motivate me that why should I go for a filing? So can you give any example where public-private partnership or licensing benefit to this, any good example where I'm putting my investment of time and cost and everything, what is the return for me? So I would like
Dr. Surya, yes, I do agree. In the beginning, yes, we had this problem. But I remember the first workshop on awareness was done at NAM when I was working way back in 2007. That the first chairman, Dr. Nagarajan, was the one who actually started, I was associated. Now, please remember the type of stakeholders we have. So when you are talking about capacity building, it has to be at different levels also, particularly in PVP. I have been an important element of farmers' rights is there, farmers' varieties is there. The scenario has completely changed, and it's good news for the authority also, I would say. Definitely there is a change between, if you look back in the last one and a half decades. Awareness level is there, but there is there is a need not for awareness, but more of demystifying some of the problems. Actually, there are a lot of myths, and those myths have to be demystified. Awareness is there, and an urge is there. Then good, all the public sector now, at least in ICAR, I know we have a very strong policy which we are implementing also. Dr. Niti was also part of the initial programs which was done as part of awareness. So that part, I think we have crossed. Attitude, yes. Only I hear from breeders or even patent applicants, whenever there is a delay, they get really frustrated. And I think as scientists, even Dr. Nagaratna is a scientist first. So we are always looking for fast results. So we address pendency. But my other thing is a little, 1 or 2 good grants motivate the scientists tremendously. And I've seen that in real life too. For example, I think one of I would rate it as a real success. There's several in the system. You have Almora ICR Institute, where they have done a great job in maize, particularly the 4 registered varieties. So once, it's something like, it's one of my favorite quotes, money is honey. If the commercialization is successful of a registered variety, that motivates the scientists directly and indirectly also. So on that front, I'm not really worried about the challenge, but I am definitely worried about some of the issues which have come. Recently, I do help a lot of farmers also. And the new method of, earlier there was just a simple application which we used to send it to the authority and it was registered. But now the farmers particularly have problems because they don't know which platform to go, because now it has to be, the dust testing has to be done mostly by the local SAU or the local, whichever the center you have. So they run from pillar to post. So what I'm trying to bring out is, can we start thinking of capacity building even at the farmer level, at the department level? I have done that once earlier before, a series in the Department of Agriculture also. And I think many states have done. So that is one area we have to concentrate if we want to motivate. Scientists, it's okay now. I think people are motivated well enough. We've had a lot of success stories, as I said. I can offhand think of the improved Samba Musuri, which is a registered variety with PPFR, and the type of interest the industry has come to take. Definitely extremely a success model, I would example of a public intervention through research and output coming, getting registered under the authority, and then having a lot of licensees and interest in license continues. I think that is a great model. Like that you have now almost in all the predominant crops. Not even cereals, I'm talking about spices, I'm talking about onion. I mean, the range is there. So I think the onus is also on some of the tech transfer offices to probably document all the success stories of the varieties which have seen the light of registration, and try and understand those itself will be enough for motivating the scientists. The next sector which you have to focus is farmers, and farmers not in English, but probably in the vernacular language. They have a farmer or FPOs, farmer groups. You've already done a lot through the Atari and KVK system, I agree. But still, when you talk to them, there's a lot of gap in their understanding. That's my
thank you, madam. I think you have given the input for me to raise another question. Again, I'm going back to authority. Two things, because if take the decision or discussion of the Dr. Kalpana, what she is asking, do you have any plan to train or engage the FPOs? Because right now we are targeting only the research organizations. Do we have plan to engage the agriculture departments of the various state governments or the district level officers, those who are? So that is the one thing. And second thing, we are discussing one word, dust testing. So if anybody from authority can give, because our audience may not know about all the technical things. What is dust testing? How is it done? And what is the role and important in this plant variety? And to add that further, there was one notification number 1 of 2019, which has given some guidelines, some requirements for dust testing to hybrids. So if you summarize this part, that will give a better picture to the stakeholders. Those who want to, those who have not applied, those who have not approached, those who want to approach to the authority or the attorneys, that will give a picture. Anybody from authority, please.
Yes, Madam, I think I will just make an initial submission. Then Madam may add to it. With regard to public notice 1 of 2019, we just like to inform you that compound registration is the very core point of the this public notice 1 of 2019, and it has been issued with a view to, as Madam has summarized in her lecture very well, that to expedite the process of registration of plant varieties, it has been issued, and both the parental lines and the hybrid are constituted as a unit together, and along with the hybrid, both of the parents must be applied for registration, and all the 3 are together applied, tested, and then registration certificate is granted. This is done for the sake of convenience, as well as to align the legal practice with the technical definition of the variety, which says because hybrids cannot survive independently. For every time, the hybrids can be produced only by the crossing the parental lines. So for production of a hybrid, each time the parental lines are involved. So both the parental lines and the hybrid constitute a unit with regard to suitability of being propagated and for stability. So this is our technology techno-legal interpretation. This issue is sub judice in nature. With regard to awareness campaigns, as Madam has also already pointed out, already we are doing at the grassroots level in coordination with the KVKs and for the farmers, and lots of our grant of award, reward and recognition to farmers and publication of citations or clear proof of success stories showcasing the capability of farmers in breeding and improving and preserving these technical varieties. Regarding dust testing, I think Madam we may elaborate further on this. Yes, ma'am, please.
Yeah, Rajganesh, can you also answer the first part of the question, that whether are we involving the state agriculture departments?
Yes, madam. Yes, please, madam, I will answer. With regard to state agricultural, we are also conducting state level awareness programs where SAUs, district agriculture officers, and their entire state machinery is involved. And we are also conducting national level awareness programs. So it is conducted at various levels, at SAU level, at the state level, and at the national level. Probably now, due to this current pandemic, our awareness programs are a little bit low, but our zeal has not come down. So probably with our with the passage of time and the subsiding of this epidemic, we will ensure that further thrust is given to capacity building at the DAO, district agriculture officer, farmer level, SAU level, and at all levels. Thank you, madam. Yeah.
Regarding this DUS testing, and very briefly, I had covered in my remarks, and also Dr. Neeti has also covered. Here, actually, whenever the variety is applied for registration, the main criteria for registration is that the variety has to undergo, I told you that it should have a, it should undergo the important criteria, that is NDUS. N is novelty. It's for it's not for the extant varieties, as already Dr. Neeti mentioned, and it is only for the new varieties. So varieties are considered when as a new variety when they are not not commercialized and not in the market for more than 1 year, for all the field crops and all the crops in India. And it is for 4 years. Now it should not be more than 4 years in other countries for field crops, and then it should not be more than 6 years for the trees and vines. Only such varieties will be considered under new category or as novel. And the other three, distinctiveness and the uniformity, and then this one, stability, it has to undergo to prove it. This is having a distinct character, and that character is uniform throughout in that seed lot. Sorry, and then it is that character is stable over the years. So the field testing has to be conducted. So where this field testing are conducted, we have recognized, or we have more than 120 DUS centers all over India. Mainly these are in SAUs, ICR institutes, and CSIR institutes. And where we have specifically identified these PAs and co-PAs also. For new varieties, field testing is done for 2 years and 2 locations. For extant VCK and farmers, it is conducted. DUS testing is conducted for at 2 locations and for 1 year, and then for the varieties notified under Section 6 of 1966, we have a separate EVRC committee. Now at present it is headed by Dr. H.S. Gupta sir, very high-end committee we have. And then based on the ECRIP data, we consider, committee will check all the this one data submitted by them. Based on that, we consider for this one registration. So here, I think one of the questions Dr. Surya was mentioning, that which phase of this process of application is most crucial. So I would say this is the step. DUS field testing is a very important and very crucial step. In other steps, from the beginning till the end, whatever the information provided by the applicants, we go with that. By the name of the applicant or contact details, all those things we agree whatever you have given. But here, in case of DUS testing, so this applicant will claim some character to get the registration, and then to identify that or to prove that we grow it in the field, and then based on that data, whatever the 2 locations we collect the data, and then interpretation of DUS test result. That's also most crucial one, because the protection given to any variety mainly depends on the DUS testing. So it is a main crucial point. And then yeah, we have a dust guidelines released for all the 161 crop species. So as per the DUS guidelines, there's PAs and co-PAs of the projects or the DUS centers, they record the data. And then we have given one of the reasons for the delay. Also, I would like to mention here when Dr. Kalpana ma'am raised this one. So earlier they used to be delay. They used to be delay in getting the data from all the DUS centers, but now we have made it compulsory that within the 4 months of the harvest of the crop, the main center, we call 2 centers as the lead center and the collaborating center. The lead center PA has to collect the data from the collaborating center. They have to compile everything and then replicated data, and we have made it compulsory 10 plants data. They have to submit it to us, and then based on that, the data will be interpreted by our assistants. We have our own teams, and also we have our own crop jurisdiction. Example, in case of me, I'm handling all the cereal crops except maize and rice. All the vegetables I'm handling, all the pulses I'm handling. So based on that crop species, it comes to me, and then I give it to my registry assistant. They go through this one and process this one. This is the main crucial point. And then I think we need to have a separate lecture on TUS field testing. Hopefully the next one program, Dr. Surya will give us more time to talk about all these things. And then one more thing we have, I want to happy to share with you that you all know that passport data, after once the distinctive character is identified and then is found in that variety, the passport data published in plant variety journal. Fine. So only passport data we used to publish, but now from August issue onwards, we are going to publish all the DUS data of that particular. I think Anita will be surprised to see this one, to listen. This is a very new one. First time I'm disclosing here. And then all the DUS data from both the centers data. So in the passport data, we are going to give a hyperlink that will take you to the data directly on the website. There you can check the data also. And then along with the photographs, we are going to publish. I think it is going to clear many of the misconception about this one. And then, so just our main idea is to maintain the transparency here. Everything is for the public now.
Thank you. Actually, that was my query, that at this stage we are not able to identify a searchable database where we can see the background information application. Because in patents, geographical indication, others, you can see the application also, where you can cross-check that what was submitted, and that gives the guidance to any applicant. So now already you people are working on that, and I'm eagerly waiting, because I'm being a professional. I'm also eagerly waiting where I can get a portal where everything can be digitized. So I have one suggestion, that if you are planning to streamline the data reporting from the DUS centers, during this process, if you can digitize that also, that rather than preparing a kind of a Excel sheet or documents or printout sending back to the authority, if you can provide any portal, online portal, this DUS centers PIs and co-PIs, they should fill the data and on a regular basis. So it will automatically come to you for analysis. That will also save the time. That is technical feasibility. You may evaluate. Just a suggestion kind of thing.
It's already under process. We are going to get it.
Okay, thank you, madam. So again, I am going back to Dr. Kalpana, because she has worked with a lot of technology transfer offices, other things, and she has said that honey and money which is very important, because IP means money. If you are not earning anything, then why you should go buy IP? That is my fundamental thing. So, ma'am, if I have to protect, I have to take a decision whether I should go for a PVP registration or not. And if already I am having PVP certificate or rights, what are the options available with me? Do we have any forum or place where I can go and search for a potential licensee? How to monetize? Any of your experience or thought on it?
It's going to be definitely a long answer for this.
Very brief, because we are about to close session. Very brief.
Is very it's of course beyond this theme of this session also, but it's extremely very challenging. But currently, I can only share what is happening in the ICR systems. In the ICR system, there is a structured way of which we have implemented since 2007, and now it's really come to an age where there are institute committees, and any prospective application, whether it's patent or PVP or anything, which stands a chance for legal protection, it is through that committee it goes upward into the various things. So that is only for application. The monetization part right now, at the ICR level, Ag Innovate is the commercial wing of a Section 25 company which is there. They take the final decision, especially if transaction of a high value and if you're going abroad. So the monetization is there. We have way back in NAM also developed several initiatives for a software DSS system by which you can take, put your material and get a basic value to the technology which you want to commercialize. So there are a lot of efforts already in place for that. But I would say the checklist is probably there for under each of the sector, including PVP. My concern in monetization of registered varieties is, as a policy, it is a non-exclusive licensing. I know it's beyond this session also, but the non-exclusive license for an X period of time. And in case of varieties, generally the feedback from many of my colleagues is the licensee does not honor some of the elements in the agreement in terms of paying the royalties. It's becoming a big issue. So now, as a policy, I think what we advise in many TPOs is go for higher upfront fees because we only allow non-exclusive licensing. So these are, different methods one has to adopt, but there is no one fit club also.
Thank you, madam. I think we are running.
Yeah, I'm giving you topics for your next series of.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying that 1.5 hours is not that enough time.
Monetization is really difficult. Licensing also is difficult, and I think that is much beyond the authorities' purview.
Yeah, we are trying to sensitize the others. Yeah. Those should encourage get the information. I'm giving back to Hannah if. But I have one question with Neeti, but is subject to the Hannah permission. As we discussed about the monetization, what are the steps should be taken to stop the infringement? I have lights, anything on infringement, but it is subject to the permission of the Hannah.
Oh, sure. Please go ahead.
Good thing you raised, Dr. Surya, because authority will have a bigger role in case of infringements, and in the next few years these are the ones which will come after registrations are done.
Yeah, Dr. Neeti.
Yes, when a registered breeder is to take an action for infringement, the most important thing to have in your checklist is to have your certificate with all annual fees paid, and in case it's renewed, then the renewal fee paid, and the certified certificate. Most importantly, besides the regular market survey that you do in other intellectual property related things, where other intellectual property rights, where you just go and find out, yes, there is infringement happening, and you can show photographs or you can show receipts and you're able to get over it. In case of plant varieties, you need to do a test. Whether the test is a DNA test or any other lab test, because as per the last case of Pioneer Overseas, which I could not take up, the courts have started accepting, have recognized the acceptance of DNA testing for contentious matters. So whether you do a DNA test or if you can do a dust test at your end, that's the best thing which a breeder could do before taking an infringement action and going before the courts, so that you have your evidence ready. So I think that's the most crucial thing. And again, going back to the same point of creating awareness, if you have a registered variety, publicize it that you have a registered variety. No, you do not want innocent infringement to happen, and ultimately, it's of no use to anybody. So the farmer who may use it may end up just had to stop using it even though he wants to, and you may not get any damages or benefit because it is being done as an innocent infringement by a farmer. So advertising and creating, I really liked what Dr. Shastri said, that we need to take out so many myths which are there regarding this act. You know, what it actually provides and what are the rights and what is actually not providing. And with so many developments happening at the authority level, you know, thank you for sharing with us, Dr. Rajganesh and Dr. Nagaratna. Then I think we are on the way, and I believe things happen in India slowly. And this is just a baby as of now as compared to other IP rights. So we have a long way to go.
Yeah. Dr. Niti, now going back to Hannah, sorry I have taken your topic is so vast, very interesting, so many queries. You can see the chat box, it's full of.
Yes. I think it clearly indicates.
I'm going back to you, handing over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it is a clear indicator that people are interested to know information, and there is a lot of curiosity about the topic, how to implement it in a so-called daily life, or for the business or for innovation, whatever. I think we have seen. I have spent in India past 12 years, and as I said, I was Niti's colleague in Anand and Anand, and I myself have seen the development on the IPR side in India, and I think also on the EBTC side, we try to develop and encourage the IPR awareness, to name but few, except for the commercialization and so on. Although EBTC is hardcore sustainability or technology transfer organization, we are very happy that we could do this workshop with ICRASAT and Anand, and also kind of put our foot in terms of awareness in the agriculture sector of some sort. So because we are already 5 minutes late, so I would like to thank you to all of you who find time, on the panelist side, also to participants. We have still around 250 people online, so I think this is a great achievement. And we will be sending you feedbacks to all of you, so please do still share your questions, and we will try to implement them for our next webinars. And I think this is a kind of, in a way, commitment from our side and ICRASAT that we are definitely planning to continue this activity going forward. And I'm sure Niti would like to be part of it as well. So if any of you would like to join us from the panelist side, we'll be always happy to have you aboard to kind of spread the knowledge about this particular topic. So with that, having said, again, thank you very much. Thank you to the listeners, and we wish you a very nice Wednesday, and hopefully see you all soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.